This 68-year-old cleaning lady was mocked by a millionaire in front of millions. When he discovered who she really was, his empire crumbled in 24 hours. The grand conference room at Horizon Technologies buzzed with excitement. Investors in expensive suits filled every seat, their eyes fixed on Bradley Thompson, the 45-year-old CEO known for turning startups into gold. His perfectly tailored suit and confident smile screamed success as he presented his latest vision, a gleaming 50-story glass tower that would replace their old building. "The future has no room for outdated relics," Bradley declared, pointing to the holographic display of his dream project. "This tower will be a symbol of progress, of—" A sudden crash interrupted his speech. Martha Sullivan, the 68-year-old cleaning lady, had accidentally knocked over a coffee cup while dusting the presentation table. Dark liquid spread across the blueprints of Bradley's precious tower. The room fell silent. Martha's weathered hands trembled as she tried to clean up the mess. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Thompson. Bradley's charming smile twisted into a sneer. "Ladies and gentlemen, do you see what I mean?" He gestured at Martha, his voice dripping with contempt. "This is exactly why we need to modernize. Age equals incompetence. We can't let sentimentality for the old hold us back from the future." Someone in the back was recording. Martha's hands shook harder as phones throughout the room pointed at her, capturing her humiliation. "Look at her, probably can't even use a smartphone." Bradley continued, playing to his audience. "How can we be a tech leader when we're surrounded by this?" Tears welled up in Martha's eyes as investors laughed. She hurried out of the room, their mockery following her into the hallway. By evening, the video had gone viral. TikTok's "crying cleaner lady" was trending nationwide. Later that night, after everyone had left, Martha sat in her small apartment above the building's old storage room. Her hands, steady now, opened a hidden wall safe behind a faded photograph of her late husband Jack. Inside lay property deeds, old letters, and photographs. Evidence of a past Bradley Thompson had conveniently forgotten. She pulled out a particular photo, a much younger Bradley, tears streaming down his face, sitting in Jack's office 15 years ago. "I don't know what to do, Mr. Sullivan," he had sobbed that day. "I'm about to lose everything." Martha remembered how Jack had helped him, given him a chance when no one else would. "Everyone deserves a second chance," Jack had said. "Sometimes people just need someone to believe in them." Martha's reflection was interrupted by voices from Bradley's office below. Through the old building's ventilation system, his words carried clearly. "I don't care about the permits. That old building comes down Christmas Eve one way or another. Those old fools won't know what hit them." Martha's hand went to her chest, her heart racing. But something else was wrong. The room seemed to spin slightly. The doctor's words from earlier that day echoed in her mind. "Early stages of Alzheimer's. Time is limited. Need to get your affairs in order." She looked at Jack's photo again, touching it gently. "Oh, Jack, what would you do?" she whispered. The photo showed them on the day they bought the building, her husband's eyes twinkling with dreams of helping young entrepreneurs build their futures. Martha pulled out her phone, her arthritic fingers slowly typing a message to her granddaughter Rachel. "We need to talk. It's about the building. And Bradley Thompson. There's something you need to know." She glanced one last time at the photo of young Bradley crying in Jack's office, then carefully placed it back in the safe. The time for tears was over. Bradley Thompson had forgotten where he came from, but Martha Sullivan was about to remind him, before her memories faded away forever. Martha's hands shook as she spread old photographs across her kitchen table. Each image told a story Bradley Thompson seemed determined to forget. In one particular photo from 15 years ago, Jack stood proudly in front of the building, his arm around a scruffy-looking young man. "That was the day we first met Bradley," Martha explained to Rachel, who sat across the table, one hand protectively over her pregnant belly. "He was living in his car, hadn't eaten in days. Your grandfather found him sleeping in the building's doorway." "The same Bradley Thompson who's now trying to destroy everything?" Rachel's voice cracked. "I can't believe it." Martha nodded, pulling out more photos. "Jack saw something in him. Gave him our smallest office space rent-free for 6 months. Taught him everything he knew about business." Rachel picked up one of the photos. Grandpa Jack really believed in second chances, didn't he? He did, but now Bradley's giving us just 7 days. Martha's voice hardened. The demolition is scheduled for Christmas Eve. They're keeping it quiet to avoid protests. Rachel's face paled. Christmas Eve? But that's when. She stopped, taking a deep breath. Grandma, there's something I need to tell you. I'm being evicted. The baby's due in 3 weeks, and I have nowhere to go. Martha reached across the table, squeezing her granddaughter's hand. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text message lit up the screen. Final test results ready. Please come in immediately. Dr. Peterson. What test results? Rachel asked, noticing her grandmother's expression. Nothing important, Martha lied, quickly putting the phone away. The early signs of Alzheimer's could wait. They had bigger problems. Across town, Bradley Thompson sat in his darkened office, staring at his own phone. The message glowed ominously. 48 hours, $2.5 million. No extensions. You know what happens if you don't pay. He loosened his tie, feeling the walls closing in. The tower project was his last chance. If he couldn't secure the demolition and new investors by Christmas, everything would collapse. His empire, his reputation, his life, all built on loans and lies. Bradley opened his desk drawer, pulling out an old, worn envelope. Inside was a letter he'd never shown anyone, written by Jack Sullivan 15 years ago. His hands trembled as he read the familiar words. Bradley, son, remember this. True success isn't measured by the height of your buildings, but by the strength of your character. I'm investing in you because I see a good heart beneath all that pain. Don't let the world harden it. A sharp knock interrupted his thoughts. His assistant entered, looking worried. Sir, the contractors need an answer about the demolition schedule, and there's someone from the bank here. Bradley quickly stuffed the letter back in his drawer. Tell them it's proceeding as planned, Christmas Eve. But sir, it's a residential building. There are families. I don't care, Bradley snapped, his facade cracking. Get it done. After his assistant left, Bradley's phone rang again. Unknown number. His stomach turned as he answered. Time's running out, Thompson, a gruff voice said. The money, or we start breaking things. Maybe we'll start with that pretty building of yours. Bradley ended the call, his hands shaking. He opened his computer, pulling up an old photo of Jack. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't want it to be this way. Back in Martha's apartment, Rachel was going through more of Jack's old papers when she found something strange. A sealed envelope, marked, to be opened only upon my death, the truth about my son. Grandma, Rachel called out, holding up the envelope. What's this? But Martha was staring out the window, her expression blank. I'm sorry, dear. Who are you again? Rachel dropped the envelope, rushing to her grandmother's side. Grandma? It's me, Rachel. Martha blinked, her eyes clearing. Of course, sweetheart, I'm just tired. She patted Rachel's hand, but they both knew it was more than fatigue. As Rachel helped her grandmother to bed, the envelope lay forgotten on the floor. Neither woman noticed the old photo slipping out, showing a much younger Jack with a woman who wasn't Martha, holding a baby. On the back was written, Bradley, 1978. The stage was set. In just 7 days, secrets buried for decades would surface. A demolition would threaten not just a building, but the foundations of multiple lives. And Martha Sullivan was running out of time to set things right. Bradley's office phone rang at midnight. It's done, a gruff voice reported. We gave those old folks a good scare. They'll think twice before protesting now. Just keep them away from the building, Bradley ordered. No physical violence, that wasn't part of the deal. Sure, boss, whatever helps you sleep at night. After hanging up, Bradley watched through his window as 2 men in black jackets left the building. He hadn't wanted to hire thugs, but time was running out. The protesters were growing, and Christmas Eve was approaching fast. At dawn, Martha discovered the damage. Threatening messages sprayed across the building's walls, smashed windows, warning notes under every door. She clutched her chest, watching elderly neighbors pack their belongings with shaking hands. We can't stay here, Mrs. Chen from apartment 3B sobbed. They said they'd come back. They said worse things would happen. Martha retreated to her apartment, opening an old jewelry box. Inside lay her wedding ring, Jack's gold watch, and her mother's pearls, family treasures meant to be Rachel's inheritance. Now, they might be their only hope. Peterson and Associates law firm, Martha spoke into her phone. I need to make an appointment. And I have items for collateral. Across town, Rachel sat in her office at Horizon Technologies, her pregnancy making the chair uncomfortable. As Bradley's legal assistant, she had access to his files. What she found made her blood run cold. Fake permits, forged signatures, environmental reports buried. The demolition wasn't just rushed, it was illegal. And there was more. Bradley's entire empire was built on fraud. She quickly copied the files to her flash drive. Her phone buzzed. A message from Martha, coming to see you. Found something important. Rachel glanced at Bradley's office. He was on the phone, gesturing angrily. This was her chance. She had to tell her grandmother everything she'd discovered. But before Martha arrived, Bradley called Rachel into his office. "Close the door," he ordered. "We need to talk about your position here." Rachel's heart raced. Had he discovered her investigation? "You've been an excellent employee," Bradley said, smiling coldly. "So loyal, just like your grandmother." "Sir? I know she's been organizing the protests. I know she's trying to stop the demolition." He slid a photo across his desk. "And I know about your situation." Rachel's hand went to her belly. The photo showed her leaving the prenatal clinic. "Unmarried, pregnant, about to be evicted," Bradley continued. "Life's tough, but I'm offering you a choice. Help me, and I'll make sure you and your baby have everything you need. New apartment, full benefits, promotion. And if I refuse, then you'll be just another unemployed single mother. Your choice." Rachel's hands trembled. "What do you want me to do?" "Keep working for me. Report everything your grandmother does. Every move, every plan." He leaned forward. "Be my eyes and ears, Rachel, for your baby's future." Before Rachel could respond, Martha appeared in the doorway, clutching her purse containing the jewelry she'd just sold. "Rachel?" Martha's voice shook. "What's going on?" Bradley stood, straightening his tie. "Just discussing your granddaughter's promotion. Isn't that right, Rachel?" Rachel looked between them, tears in her eyes. "Yes, my promotion." Martha's face fell. She recognized the look in Rachel's eyes, the same look Bradley had 15 years ago when he chose ambition over integrity. Later that night, Martha sorted through old photos, her memory still sharp enough to recall each moment. A small metal safe sat open beside her, filled with documents from the Cold War era that Jack had hidden away. Government secrets, old military contracts, dangerous information they'd been entrusted to protect. Her phone rang. Rachel's number. "Grandma," Rachel's voice cracked. "I need to tell you something. About Bradley. About the building. About everything." "Not on the phone," Martha interrupted. "Meet me tomorrow, early. There's something you need to see first." After hanging up, Martha looked at her reflection in the window. "Jack," she whispered, "I'm selling everything we built together. Not for money. For justice." She didn't notice the shadow moving outside her window, watching, reporting back to Bradley about every move she made. The pieces were in motion. Rachel's betrayal, Martha's sacrifice, Bradley's desperation, all leading to a collision course. And somewhere in the darkness, hired thugs waited for their next orders, ready to ensure the demolition would proceed, no matter the cost. Bradley sat alone in his office, staring at the DNA test results on his computer screen. The numbers didn't lie. His whole life had been built on a lie. 99.9% probability of paternal match with Jack Sullivan. The room spun. Memories flooded back. Jack's kindness, his mentorship, the way he'd always treated Bradley like a son. Because he was his son. "Why didn't you tell me?" Bradley whispered to the empty room. His phone buzzed, another threat from the loan sharks. The timer was ticking down. Across town, Rachel paced in her apartment, torn between loyalty to her grandmother and Bradley's threats. Her hand touched the flash drive in her pocket, heavy with evidence of Bradley's crimes. Her phone lit up with a text from Bradley. "Meeting in 10. Bring update on Martha." As Rachel headed to the office, Martha stood in her kitchen, staring at the coffee maker. Something felt wrong. The machine looked strange, unfamiliar. "How do I?" she mumbled, her hands shaking. The doctor's words echoed, early onset Alzheimer's, progressing faster than expected. The doorbell rang. Martha opened it to find Mrs. Chen crying. "They're evicting everyone," Mrs. Chen sobbed. 50 families, all seniors. Where will we go?" Martha tried to comfort her neighbor, but the words wouldn't come. Names, faces, memories, everything was starting to blur. In Bradley's office, Rachel delivered her report. Grandma sold her jewelry this morning, she said, avoiding his eyes. She's meeting with lawyers. And the safe? Did you find it? No, but Bradley slammed his hand on the desk. That safe contains everything. Find it. What's so important about a safe? Your grandfather. Bradley stopped, catching himself. Jack Sullivan wasn't just a businessman, he kept records, dangerous ones. Rachel's phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Her blood froze as she opened it. Photos of her leaving Bradley's office, time-stamped. The message read, "We know you're working both sides. Choose wisely." Bradley noticed her reaction. Problems? No, Rachel lied. Morning sickness. She left his office, her mind racing. In the bathroom, she pulled out the flash drive, ready to destroy it, but stopped. Another message arrived. Surveillance photos of Martha, walking alone at night. The threat was clear. Betray Bradley. Martha gets hurt. Betray Martha, lose everything. Meanwhile, Martha sat in her apartment, recording a video on her phone. Rachel, if you're watching this, my memory has failed. There are things you need to know. About Jack, about Bradley, about the building. The safe. The safe is... She paused, terrified. Where was the safe? The location danced just out of reach in her fading memory. A knock at the door startled her. A man in an expensive suit stood there. Mrs. Sullivan? I'm from Councilman Wilson's office. We need to discuss your interference with the demolition project. Martha recognized the threat in his smile. Tell the councilman I have copies of everything. If anything happens to me or this building, the press gets them all. The man's smile vanished. That would be unwise, Mrs. Sullivan. Very unwise. After he left, Martha rushed to call Rachel, but stopped. Who could she trust now? In his office, Bradley opened Jack's old diary, found in the building's archives. A photo fell out. Young Bradley with his mother and Jack. I'll always protect him, Jack had written. Even if he never knows I'm his father. Bradley's phone rang. The loan shark again. Time's running out, Thompson. But here's a deal. Get us those Cold War documents from Sullivan's safe. We'll cancel your debt. Otherwise... Bradley stared at Jack's photo. Father and son separated by secrets, now on a collision course. Outside, protesters gathered. 50 families faced eviction. Rachel carried evidence that could destroy Bradley. Martha's memories slipped away like sand, and somewhere in the building, a safe held secrets that could change everything. Christmas Eve was coming. The demolition countdown continued, and no one knew who to trust anymore. 72 hours until Christmas Eve. Martha sat in her living room, staring at the video camera she'd borrowed from a neighbor. Her hands shook as she pressed record. My name is Martha Sullivan. If you're watching this, my memory has failed completely. Rachel, sweetheart, the documents you need to save our home are... She paused, struggling. Are... The location slipped away like water through her fingers. She stopped the recording, fighting back tears. 3 days left, and her mind was betraying her. At Horizon Technologies, Bradley stared at his phone. 48 hours remaining blazed across the screen. The loan shark's message underneath, documents or death. Choose. His assistant knocked. Sir, the demolition crew needs confirmation. They're worried about the weather forecast for Christmas Eve. Tell them it's happening no matter what, Bradley snapped. He opened his drawer, pulling out Jack's diary. His father's diary. The truth still felt surreal. Rachel sat in her small office, one hand on her pregnant belly, the other holding her phone. The latest ultrasound photo showed 2 distinct shapes, twins. The doctor's words echoed, high-risk pregnancy, need bed rest. Her computer dinged. An email from Bradley, meeting now. In the conference room, Bradley paced. The protesters are gaining support. Local news is sniffing around. Fix it. How? Rachel asked. Plant these documents. He slid a folder across the table. They'll show Martha's mentally unfit. Get her declared incompetent. Rachel's stomach turned. You want me to help declare my own grandmother insane? For your baby's future, Bradley reminded her. Twins need twice everything. Back in her apartment, Martha received an unexpected visitor, Councilman Wilson himself. Mrs. Sullivan, he smiled coldly. Let's discuss those documents you're threatening to expose. The ones about your kickbacks from developers? Martha met his gaze. Or the environmental reports you buried? Careful, Mrs. Sullivan. Accidents happen to elderly people all the time. Falls are so common. After he left, Martha rushed to her bedroom. Where was the safe? Which wall? Her mind clouded over. She grabbed her phone, dialing Rachel's number. Rachel answered, her voice tight. Grandma? Rachel, I need... Martha stopped. For a terrifying moment, she couldn't remember her granddaughter's face. "Grandma, are you okay?" "The safe," Martha whispered. "I need to remember the safe." Rachel ended the call, tears streaming. She opened Bradley's folder, staring at the fake medical reports that would declare her grandmother incompetent. Outside Martha's building, protesters gathered in the cold. News vans arrived. Signs read, "Save our homes" and "Stop the Christmas demolition." Bradley watched from his office window as the crowd grew. His phone buzzed. A photo appeared, him as a baby in Jack's arms. Message: "Imagine this" splashed across the news. "CEO destroys own father's legacy. TikTok." He slammed the phone down, hands shaking. Another message arrived. 24 hours left for payment. Martha sat in her kitchen, surrounded by old photos. She had to record everything before it faded. Her phone lit up with a news alert. Horizon Technologies CEO faces criminal investigation. She clicked the link. Bradley's face filled the screen, leaving a courthouse. The headline mentioned fraud, corruption, hidden documents. A crash outside made her jump. Two men in black watched her window. Councilman Wilson's warning echoed in her mind. Rachel spent her lunch break at the courthouse filing papers, not Bradley's fake competency documents, but evidence of his crimes. Her hands trembled as she made copies. Her phone chimed. The blackmailer again. Time to choose sides. Tomorrow's deadline: Martha or Bradley. At sunset, Martha made one final video. "Rachel, if you're seeing this, I'm no longer myself. But remember, Jack knew everything. He left a video for Christmas Eve, in the safe." The safe, she stopped, frustrated. Behind the memory vanished. 3 separate countdowns ticked away: 72 hours until demolition, 24 hours until the loan shark's deadline. And every minute, Martha's memories faded like photographs left in the sun. Christmas Eve approached, bringing either salvation or destruction. For now, snow began to fall on the protesters below, their signs raised against the darkening sky. Bradley's hands trembled as he held the DNA test results. The morning sun cast long shadows in his office, but the truth cast longer ones across his life. He opened Jack's diary again, reading the entry from 1978. "Today I held my son for the first time. His mother made me promise to stay away, said he deserved a better life than a small-time businessman could provide. But I'll watch over him, always." A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." Rachel entered, carrying a stack of files. She stopped when she saw the papers on his desk. "What's that?" she asked. Bradley quickly covered the DNA results, but not before Rachel glimpsed the familiar letterhead. The same lab that did her prenatal testing. "Nothing important," he said. "Updates on the demolition?" Rachel handed him a report. "The crews are ready for Christmas Eve, but there's a problem. Environmental inspectors found asbestos. The whole neighborhood could be at risk." "Bury it," Bradley ordered. "Like everything else." "There's more," Rachel said. "Someone leaked documents to the press about the building's history." She showed him her phone. The local news headline read, "Historic building holds Cold War secrets. What is CEO Bradley Thompson trying to destroy?" Bradley's phone rang. "The loan shark. You have 12 hours. Get us those documents, or we start breaking things. Starting with your legs." After Rachel left, Bradley opened his safe, pulling out a yellow envelope. Inside, a letter from his mother, dated just before her death. "Find Jack Sullivan. He's your father. He never stopped loving you." Across town, Martha sat in her doctor's office, receiving the latest test results. "The progression is rapid," Dr. Peterson explained. "You may have only weeks of clear memory left." Martha nodded, clutching her purse. Inside, a small recorder captured everything. For Rachel. For the future she might not remember. Back at the building, Martha found 2 men in suits going through her apartment. "Mrs. Sullivan," one smiled coldly, "Councilman Wilson sent us to help you relocate." "Get out," Martha ordered, her voice steady despite her fear. "The councilman insists." The man stepped closer. "He's concerned about your mental state." A crash from the hallway interrupted them. Rachel stood in the doorway, her pregnancy making her look more vulnerable than ever. "Leave my grandmother alone," she demanded. The men exchanged looks. "This isn't over," one warned as they left. Once alone, Martha hugged Rachel tight. "The safe," she whispered urgently. "I remember now. It's—" But the memory slipped away again, leaving only frustration in its wake. Rachel pulled away, guilt crushing her chest. "Grandma, I need to tell you something about Bradley." Before she could continue, Martha's phone rang. The news station. They wanted an interview about the Cold War documents. What documents? Martha asked, confused. Another memory gone. Rachel's phone buzzed. A message from Bradley. My office. Now. In Bradley's office, the truth finally exploded. You're Jack's granddaughter, Bradley said flatly. Which makes you your niece, Rachel finished. She held up the DNA results she'd found on his desk. I saw the lab name, did the math. Bradley sank into his chair. Does Martha know? That her husband had another family? That you're her stepson? That this whole time? That's enough. Bradley slammed his fist down. None of this changes anything. The building comes down. Rachel stood, one hand on her belly. It changes everything. We're family. Family? Bradley laughed bitterly. Jack abandoned me, left me with a mother who could barely feed me. He protected you, Rachel argued. Read his diary. Really read it. Bradley's phone buzzed again, a final warning from the loan shark, with photos of Martha attached. Time's up. Get us those documents or the old lady has an accident. Rachel saw the message, saw the fear in Bradley's eyes. You're in trouble, aren't you? Let us help you. Help me? I'm trying to help you. All of you. If I don't get those documents by tonight. A commotion outside interrupted them. Protesters had breached the building's security. Signs pressed against Bradley's office windows. My babies will be your nieces or nephews, Rachel said quietly. Is your tower worth destroying your own family? Bradley stared at the DNA results, at Jack's diary, at the protesters outside. The loan shark's threats. The demolition countdown. The family he never knew he had. Everything was connected. Everything led back to Jack Sullivan and the secrets hidden in a safe that Martha couldn't remember. Time was running out for everyone. Bradley paced his office, ignoring the growing crowd of protesters outside. The revelation about Rachel hit him like a physical blow. Jack's diary lay open on his desk, filled with entries about a son he'd watched from afar. His phone buzzed. The loan shark's latest message included a video. Martha walking alone, filmed just hours ago. Final warning. Documents by midnight, or the old lady disappears. Rachel's words echoed in his mind. We're family. He'd spent 15 years trying to forget Jack Sullivan, and now... A notification popped up on his computer. The hashtag #SaveAmericanDream was trending nationwide. Someone had leaked photos of young Bradley with Jack, stories of how the building had helped countless struggling entrepreneurs. Sir, his assistant interrupted through the intercom. Martha Sullivan is here. Bradley froze. Send her in. Martha entered, looking smaller than he remembered. Her eyes darted around the room, confused. Mrs. Sullivan, Bradley started. I know who you are, Martha cut him off. Jack's son. Bradley's heart stopped. How long have you known? Since the beginning. Jack told me everything the day we married. He watched you graduate high school from his car. Attended every football game, sitting in the back row. He was there? Every important moment of your life. He kept photos, news clippings. Martha stopped, her face clouding. I'm sorry. Who are you again? The moment of clarity was gone. Bradley watched helplessly as confusion overtook her features. His phone buzzed again. Another threat, another deadline, another photo of Martha being watched. Rachel burst into the office. Grandma, I've been looking everywhere for you. Rachel? Martha's eyes cleared briefly. The safe. I remembered something about the safe. Bradley leaned forward. What about it? But Martha was staring at the wall, lost again. Rachel's phone chimed. She opened it to find evidence of her secret courthouse filing leaked online. Comments poured in. CEO's own family exposes corruption. You filed against me? Bradley demanded. I had to do something. Rachel shot back. You're threatening my grandmother, my home, my baby's future. I'm trying to protect you, all of you. Bradley pulled up his bank account. Look, I'm broke. The tower project is my only chance to pay off. He stopped. Pay off what? Rachel pressed. Before he could answer, his assistant rushed in. Sir, the press is here. They're asking about Jack Sullivan's secret son. It's all over social media. Bradley refreshed his newsfeed. His face stared back from dozens of headlines. CEO destroys father's legacy and family war behind Christmas demolition. Martha stood shakily. Jack left a video for Christmas Eve. He knew this would happen. What's on it? Bradley demanded. I don't. Martha pressed her hands to her temples. I can't remember. Rachel helped her grandmother to a chair. The safe, Grandma. Try to remember the safe. The painting, Martha whispered, behind the... Her voice trailed off. The memory slipped away again. Bradley's phone rang. The loan shark wasn't texting anymore. "Time's up, Thompson. We're coming for the old lady, maybe her granddaughter too." Bradley ended the call, his hands shaking. "Both of you need to leave town, now." "Why?" Rachel demanded. "Because I'm not the only one who wants those documents, and these people, they don't care who gets hurt." Outside, the protest had grown. News helicopters circled the building. The hashtag Save American Dream reached #1, trending worldwide. Martha stood suddenly. "Jack's office, the day you cried about losing everything. Look there." Bradley stared at her. "What?" "I don't know." Martha looked lost again. "Who are you?" Rachel's phone buzzed with a new threat. Photos of her at the courthouse, her doctor's office, her home. Choose sides by midnight. Bradley looked at his newfound family, at Jack's diary, at the crowds below. Everything his father built, everything he'd tried to destroy, all the lies and secrets. The clock struck 6. 6 hours until midnight. 18 hours until Christmas Eve demolition. And somewhere in the building, behind a painting Martha couldn't remember, a safe held the truth that could save or destroy them all. Christmas Eve morning dawned cold and gray. Demolition crews positioned their equipment around the building, while protesters huddled in the winter chill, their numbers growing by the hour. Inside her apartment, Martha stared at old photographs, trying to hold on to fading memories. Names, faces, dates, everything blurred together now. Only one thought remained clear. She had to find the safe before midnight. Her phone rang. Another reporter asking about Bradley Thompson's secret past. She couldn't remember if she was supposed to talk to them or not. "Mrs. Sullivan?" A voice called through her door. "Building inspection. We need to check your apartment." Martha recognized the lie. The loan shark's men had finally come. At Horizon Technologies, Bradley faced a rebellion. Employees gathered in the lobby, led by his senior staff. "We won't be part of this," his CFO announced. "Destroying homes on Christmas Eve? Threatening an elderly woman? We're all resigning." Bradley watched helplessly as dozens of employees placed their badges on the reception desk, his empire crumbling before his eyes. His phone buzzed. The loan shark. "Midnight approaches. Bring the documents to the parking garage, alone." Rachel burst into his office, clutching her belly. "Something's wrong. The babies." "You need a hospital." Bradley reached for his phone. "No. Listen, Grandma's in danger. Those men you hired." "I didn't hire them," Bradley interrupted. "They're after the Cold War documents, the ones in the safe." "What documents?" "Nuclear launch sites, military bunkers, things Jack protected during the Cold War, worth millions to the right buyers." A commotion erupted outside. The demolition crew had started early, tearing down the building's outer fence. "Stop them," Rachel pleaded. "I can't. If I don't pay by midnight." Bradley showed her the latest threat. Photos of Martha being followed, of Rachel at her doctor's appointments. Rachel doubled over in pain. "The babies, they're coming." "It's too early." "Tell them that." Rachel grabbed his arm. "Bradley, please, help us." Bradley stared at his niece, family he never knew he had. His phone buzzed again, security footage of men entering the building, heading for Martha's apartment. "Get to the hospital," he ordered Rachel. "I'll handle this." But as Rachel turned to leave, the lights went out. Emergency generators hummed to life. "Power cut," his assistant reported. "The whole block's dark." Through the window, they watched demolition equipment move into position. In the dim light, shadows moved through the building. Hunting. Martha stood in her dark apartment, gripping her phone. The latest memory video she'd recorded played back. The safe is behind the painting of... The rest was static. Heavy footsteps approached her door. The loan shark's men had found her. Bradley raced through the darkened building, Jack's diary clutched in his hand. The answer had to be in here. Some clue about the safe's location. His phone lit up. Final warning. Documents, or they both die. Midnight. Rachel's labor pains intensified as she tried to reach the elevator. Trapped between floors when the power failed, she could only watch through the glass as men with flashlights searched the building below. Outside, the protest reached a fever pitch. News crews captured the scene. Demolition crews moving in, protesters forming human chains, and police trying to maintain order on Christmas Eve. The hashtag Save American Dream exploded globally. Live streams showed the unfolding drama. The homeless CEO's son destroying his father's legacy. The pregnant granddaughter in labor. The grandmother with failing memory, hiding Cold War secrets. Martha heard her door lock click. They were breaking in. Bradley sprinted up the stairs, reading Jack's diary by phone light. The final entry caught his eye. Kept my most precious things behind my greatest pride. The first dollar I ever earned. His steps faltered. The painting. The one that hung in Jack's old office for decades. The first dollar he'd earned, framed. Rachel's scream echoed through the elevator shaft. The babies weren't waiting. Martha backed away as her door swung open. Dark figures entered. Bradley reached Jack's old office, now a storage room. There in the darkness, the painting still hung. Behind it, the safe. But he wasn't alone. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. The loan shark's men had found it too. Outside, demolition equipment roared to life. Time had run out for everyone. The first light of Christmas morning broke over a scene of chaos. Protesters linked arms around the building, facing down demolition crews. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live. Inside Jack's old office, Bradley faced the loan shark's men in the dark. "Step away from the painting," a gruff voice ordered. "This is my father's building." Bradley's voice shook. "My father's safe. You got 10 seconds before we do this the hard way." Bradley's phone lit up. A message from Rachel. "In elevator, baby's coming. Help." Another message flashed. A live video of men entering Martha's apartment. 2 families in danger. His family. 5 seconds. Bradley ripped the painting from the wall. The safe gleamed in his phone's light. Combination. Now. A gun pressed against his back. Bradley's fingers moved to the dial, then stopped. A memory surfaced. Young Bradley watching Jack open his office safe, singing a tune. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. The combination. It was in the hymn. Down the hall, Martha faced intruders of her own. "The documents, Mrs. Sullivan. Where are they?" Martha looked at them blankly. "What documents? Don't play games. The Cold War files." For once, Martha's failing memory worked in her favor. She genuinely couldn't remember. In the elevator, Rachel fought through another contraction. Her phone showed the live news coverage. Christmas morning standoff, elderly woman and pregnant mother trapped inside. The hashtag Save American Dream had reached the White House. Comments flooded in from around the world. Bradley's fingers moved on the safe dial. Amazing. 1. Grace. 7. How 5. The safe clicked open. Inside, a USB drive, an envelope marked for Bradley Christmas Emergency, and a DVD labeled Play Me First. "Hand them over." The gun pressed harder. Bradley held up the USB drive. "Catch." He tossed it left while diving right. Chaos erupted in the darkness. Flashlights spun. Fists flew. Bradley scrambled away, clutching the envelope and DVD. His phone buzzed. Rachel's contractions were 2 minutes apart. In Martha's apartment, a moment of clarity struck. She remembered. "The documents you want?" She smiled. "They're fake." "What?" Jack never kept real secrets here. He fed false information to flush out threats. She laughed. "The real documents are with the FBI. Have been for years." The men's phones buzzed simultaneously. Red and blue lights filled the windows. FBI vehicles surrounded the building. Bradley ran through dark hallways, past FBI agents storming in. He reached the elevator, prying the doors open. "Rachel." "Bradley, they're coming. The babies." "Hold on." He worked the manual release, lowering the elevator to the nearest floor. His phone lit up. A video link. Martha's apartment surveillance. The loan shark's men in handcuffs. Martha safe. The envelope in his pocket felt heavy. He tore it open, reading Jack's letter by phone light. "Son, if you're reading this, you're in trouble on Christmas. The DVD explains everything. But know this. I never abandoned you. I protected you from dangerous people who wanted these documents. Your mother agreed. We kept you safe the only way we could, from a distance. I've loved you every day of your life." The elevator doors opened. Rachel lay on the floor, fighting contractions. "The babies? They're coming now." Outside, the demolition crews powered down their machines. The FBI had halted everything. Bradley's phone showed another alert. Breaking, Cold War sting operation exposed, Sullivan Building central to decades-long FBI operation. More news flooded in. The loan shark's entire organization arrested. Bradley's debts revealed as part of the FBI trap. His tower project, the demolition, all part of a larger operation to catch document thieves. "Bradley," Rachel grabbed his hand. "The first one's coming." Paramedics rushed in. News cameras caught everything. Bradley Thompson, the prodigal son, helping deliver his niece's twins on Christmas morning in the building he'd tried to destroy. Martha appeared, supported by FBI agents. Another moment of clarity let her witness the birth of her great-grandchildren. As the first baby's cry echoed through the building, Bradley's phone played a new alert. The last piece of Jack's plan, a video recorded years ago, ready to tell the whole story. The truth about why Jack stayed away, why he helped young entrepreneurs, why he protected Bradley from afar. Everything was about to change. The building's old conference room filled with people as Bradley set up Jack's DVD. FBI agents, news crews, protesters, and employees gathered around the screen. Rachel watched from her hospital bed, connected via video call, her newborn twins sleeping nearby. Martha sat in the front row, one of her rare clear moments allowing her to understand the gravity of the situation. Ready? Bradley's finger hovered over the play button. The screen flickered to life. Jack Sullivan appeared, looking exactly as he had 15 years ago. "If you're watching this, it's Christmas morning, and everything has fallen into place," Jack began. "Bradley, son, you're probably angry, confused, but let me explain why I stayed away." The room fell silent as Jack told the story. During the Cold War, he'd been part of a civilian network protecting classified information. The building itself was a front, attracting Soviet attention, while real documents were secured elsewhere. "Your mother worked for the other side," Jack revealed, "but she fell in love with me, switched allegiances. When she got pregnant with you, we knew you'd be a target. The only way to keep you safe was to separate, to watch from a distance." Bradley sank into a chair, memories realigning with new context. "The loan sharks threatening you now?" Jack continued. "Russian intelligence, still hunting after all these years. The FBI used them to protect you, to guide you here, to this moment." The FBI agent in charge stepped forward. "Everything was monitored. The demolition plan, the loans, the threats, we needed them to surface after all these years." On screen, Jack smiled. "Son, every time you almost failed, every time you needed help, I found a way to be there. The mysterious investors who saved your company? Me. The anonymous tips that helped you succeed? Me." News cameras rolled as Jack revealed more. The building hadn't just been a cover. It had become a genuine sanctuary for struggling entrepreneurs, a way to do good while maintaining its strategic purpose. "Martha knew everything," Jack explained. "She helped maintain the cover, helped me watch over you. Bradley, she's as much your mother as your birth mother was." Martha wiped tears, nodding. For once, her memories were crystal clear. "The real documents were turned over decades ago," Jack continued. "But this building? It's yours now. Both of you, Bradley and Rachel, my son and granddaughter. Use it like I did. Help people. Create opportunities. That's the real American dream." Bradley's phone buzzed. The FBI operation had made national news. His debts were cleared. They'd been part of the operation all along. His reputation, instead of being destroyed, was being rewritten as part of a decades-long patriotic mission. The video ended with Jack's final message. "Bradley, Rachel, Martha, you're my legacy, not this building, not the secrets. You make me proud." The room erupted in applause. Outside, the demolition crews packed up. Protesters celebrated. The hashtag American Dream Saved trended worldwide. But Bradley barely noticed. He stared at old photos of Jack attending his football games, hiding in the back row. His father had been there all along. His phone lit up with another message. A different video. His birth mother recorded before her death, explaining her side, how she'd chosen America over her mission. Chosen his safety over being in his life. Rachel's voice came through the video call. "Uncle Bradley? The twins, would you like to meet your niece and nephew?" The hospital camera showed two tiny faces. "Meet Jack and Grace," Rachel said softly. Martha stood addressing the crowd. "This building has always been about second chances, about dreams, about family." She turned to Bradley. "Your father never gave up on you. Don't give up on his dream." Bradley looked around the room, at the FBI agents who'd protected him, at the employees who'd stood up for what's right, at the protesters who'd fought to save something they believed in, at his family. His phone showed breaking news. "Christmas miracle, Cold War secret brings family together." The American dream wasn't about towers of glass and steel, it was about this: family, truth, redemption. But as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, a nurse rushed in with urgent news from the hospital. Something was wrong with the twins. The celebration stopped. The real crisis was just beginning. Bradley's car sped through empty Christmas morning streets toward the hospital. His phone kept ringing, reporters, FBI agents, investors, but he ignored them all. In the hospital waiting room, Rachel sat in a wheelchair, sobbing. The twins? Their oxygen levels keep dropping. They need specialized equipment. How much? Bradley demanded. The insurance won't cover it. Experimental treatment. $500,000. Bradley checked his accounts on his phone. The FBI operation had cleared his debts, but his assets were still frozen. The tower project investors had all pulled out. Martha arrived, supported by a nurse. Sell the building, she said clearly. Save the babies. No. Bradley pulled out his phone. I have a better idea. He dialed live on national television. The press conference was still running in the building's conference room. My name is Bradley Thompson, he started. I'm confessing to every questionable deal, every corner cut, every person I hurt climbing to the top, and I'm making it right. Rachel watched on the hospital TV as her uncle detailed years of business crimes. The headlines shifted in real time. CEO's Christmas confession. I'm surrendering all my personal assets, Bradley continued. Everything I own will be sold to create the Jack Sullivan Foundation, helping entrepreneurs and families in need. His lawyer texted frantically, Stop talking. Bradley ignored it. The building stays. It's not mine to sell. It belongs to the community my father built. Martha's eyes cleared again. Jack would be proud. Bradley wasn't finished. And to the families I almost made homeless, your apartments are yours. Permanently. No rent increases. Ever. Social media exploded. Christmas confession and Sullivan legacy trended globally. A doctor rushed in. The twins' oxygen is critical. We need to decide now. Bradley handed over his personal credit cards. Do whatever it takes. Rachel grabbed his hand. You'll lose everything. No, Bradley smiled. For the first time, I'm finding everything. Hours passed in the waiting room. Martha drifted in and out of clarity, sometimes recognizing them, sometimes not. Bradley's phone kept buzzing with news alerts. Thompson Empire crumbles. CEO earns fortune to save twins. Sullivan building declared historical landmark. Finally, the doctor returned. The twins are stabilizing. The treatment worked. Relief flooded the room. Rachel hugged Bradley, whispering, Thank you, Uncle. Back at the building, Bradley faced the press again. This time, he brought proof of every deal, every transaction, every mistake. The Sullivan Foundation starts now, he announced, with transparency, with purpose, with redemption. His phone buzzed. A message from the FBI, surveillance photos of his mother, years ago, watching him graduate college. She hadn't abandoned him either. She'd been protecting him, just like Jack. Martha stood beside him at the podium, another moment of clarity allowing her to address the crowd. This building was never about secrets, she said. It was about hope, about second chances, about family. The crowd cheered as Bradley unveiled the new building sign. The Sullivan Center for American Dreams. His assistant rushed in with news. Sir, people are donating to the foundation. Millions already. Your confession inspired them. Rachel watched from her hospital room as her uncle transformed from ruthless CEO to something else entirely, a man living up to his father's legacy. The twins' monitors showed strong vital signs. Outside, Christmas snow fell on protesters now celebrating victory. Inside the old building, families who'd feared eviction now had permanent homes. Bradley's phone showed one last alert. Thompson trades tower for truth, a Christmas story of redemption. Martha touched his arm. Jack knew this would happen. All of it. How? Because he knew his son's heart, even when you didn't. Bradley looked at his phone. One last video remained, from his mother. The final piece of his story waiting to be heard. But first, he had a foundation to build, twins to meet, and a legacy to live up to. The price of redemption was everything he owned. The reward was everything he never knew he needed. 1 year later, the Sullivan Center bustled with activity. Where Bradley's glass tower was supposed to stand, a thriving community center now served hundreds of families daily. Bradley sat in his modest office, the same one where Jack had mentored him 15 years ago. His phone notification showed the day's schedule. Jack and Grace's first birthday party, Community Hall, 2 p.m. A knock at his door. A young entrepreneur entered, clutching a business plan. Mr. Thompson, I can't afford the rent for my startup. Bradley smiled. remembering himself at that age. "Take a seat. Let's figure this out together." In the legal aid clinic downstairs, Rachel adjusted her twins' playpens while advising a client. Her pro bono practice had helped dozens of families stay in their homes. "Just like your grandfather," Bradley said from the doorway, "always fighting for the underdog." The twins reached for their uncle, babbling happily. On the wall behind them hung the newspaper headline from a year ago, "Christmas Miracle: How One Building Saved a Family and a Community." Martha spent her good days in the senior center she'd helped create. Though her memory continued to fade, she'd recorded everything she wanted preserved. Her videos played on a special channel, sharing wisdom with new entrepreneurs. Remember, her recording played, "Success isn't about building walls, it's about opening doors." The Sullivan Foundation had exceeded all expectations. Bradley's confession inspired thousands of donations. His transparency about his past mistakes became a Harvard Business School case study in corporate redemption. "Uncle Bradley," Rachel called out. "They're ready for the ceremony." The community hall filled with families, residents, entrepreneurs, employees. The same people who'd protested the demolition now celebrated their shared success. Bradley approached the podium, facing the crowd. Behind him, workers unveiled a bronze statue of Jack Sullivan. "1 year ago, I stood here a different man," Bradley began. "I thought the American dream meant building something tall enough to touch the sky. My father knew better. He built something stronger, a community." Rachel joined him on stage, the twins dressed in matching outfits. The Sullivan Center has helped launch 50 new businesses this year, provided homes for hundreds of families, created a legacy worthy of the man who watched over all of us, even when we didn't know it. Martha had a clear moment as she cut the celebration cake. "Jack always said success was like this building. It needs a strong foundation." Bradley's phone buzzed. Another donation alert. The foundation's endowment had passed $100 million. His old business associates had finally understood. Giving back was the best investment. "And now," Bradley continued, "we have an announcement. The Sullivan Center is expanding. We're opening 5 new locations across the country. Not towers of glass and steel, but centers of hope and opportunity." The crowd cheered. News cameras rolled. The hashtag Sullivan Legacy trended again. Rachel unveiled the new project plans. "Each center will have what we have here: affordable housing, business incubators, legal aid clinics, senior services, a complete community." Bradley watched the twins crawl near Jack's statue. "My father left us more than a building. He left us a blueprint for what matters: family, community, second chances." Martha's latest brain scan had shown rapid decline, but she smiled clearly now. "Jack knew love would bring you home, Bradley. Love always finds a way." The celebration continued as sunset painted the old building's walls golden. Where Bradley had once planned to build a tower of glass, a community had grown instead. Where corporate offices would have stood, children now played. His phone showed one last notification, his mother's final video, still unwatched. He'd been saving it for today. "Ready?" Rachel asked. Bradley looked around, at his family, at Jack's legacy, at the future they'd built from the ruins of his past. "Ready," he said. The video would complete their story. But the real story was already here. In the laughter of children, in the dreams of entrepreneurs, in the wisdom of elders, in the strength of community. Jack Sullivan had built more than a building. He'd built a family. And now that family was building something even greater, a living legacy of the true American dream. As night fell on the Sullivan Center, lights glowed warmly in windows that had almost been demolished. Inside each one, a family, a dream, a future. Just as Jack had planned all along. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share what moved you most in the comments below. What would you have done in Bradley's place? Or maybe share a story about your own family's second chances. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more touching stories that remind us what truly matters in life. As Jack Sullivan always said, the greatest towers aren't built with steel and glass, but with love, forgiveness, and the courage to choose family over fortune. See you in our next story.